as I listened to Jessica, I've had a little bit of shift in what I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to blend some of your concepts. So my work is about embodiment. Embodiment, and as we go through, even the words that Jessica used. So we all hear the word alignment a lot, and embodiment. So what exactly does that mean? And that's where I come in. That's what I want to show you and share with you today is all about you and your face and how you might better embody those gifts that Jessica talked about, because they are intellectual, they are mental, and so with psychosomatic, psycho meaning the mind, somatic meaning the body. And Amanda spoke about somatics this morning, and that's the world I live in. It really is. My poor children. They would tell you that, because my son had a friend come over the other day, and he'd hurt his elbow or something, and I said, well, which side? What does it look like? What happened when you did this? And Cole, my son, said, oh my God, Mom, you're not going to do that. I said, shh. And so I talked to this, he was an 18-year-old kid, about what had happened and why he was, I know what, his fingers were peeling on his right hand. And I asked him, I said, well, what happened? He said, well, when I was 15, my parents got divorced. And it started then. And so we talked about, so that's a somatic response in the body that becomes physical. So it's energy moving out, and our bodies are so dense that they give us messages that we can physically see. Oh, my fingers are peeling. And so we talked about what that meant. And the funny thing was, the kid left, and later Cole said, Mom, you freaked him out. Because he said that's exactly what it was. And he also had a somatic response because it made him teary to remember what had happened and how difficult and how angry he was. And the irritation came out in his skin by peeling and being red and on fire. So the language that we use matters in how our bodies are responding to what's coming out of us. And so that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to do a little exercise right in the beginning and then build upon that so you can have an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay? So what I'd like everyone to do is just put your books down. We're going to just kind of walk around the room for a minute. Those are your only instructions. So everybody stand up, please. And yeah, just walk around for a minute. Yeah, just kind of come in the circle and just walk. Okay, and I'd like you to stop where you're at. Okay, now without changing or moving your feet, what I want you to do is notice your foot position. So look at your feet and just take a picture in your brain. Are your feet going out? Is one foot going out versus the other? Do they tend to come in? Are they close together? Are they wide apart? I just want you to notice, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means, but this is for you to remember so you know, because this is about you, not me. And you specifically, so as you look at your feet, really notice, and look around the room, so don't move yet. Notice how some people's feet are out. Notice how some people's feet are close together. Some people have one foot out more than the other. Some people have one turned in. So that's what we're going to talk about is what exactly does that mean? How am I showing up in my life? Physically, not just mentally, because they go together. Okay? All right, let's go back to our chairs. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So every one of us wake up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we take a shower, and what we have these habitual patterns that we do every single day, and we're usually not aware that we have these patterns. And what I want to share with you is your body has the patterns that could be improved. Because if we're not aware of the pattern and we get frustrated that we're not moving forward, that's what this work is about. Okay, if I can notice how I'm being and step into a different way, that's the embodiment, that's the alignment that Jessica was talking about. So this is the embodiment of the material, and it will probably build through the day. And so that's why it's so important for you to begin to notice. So when you go to the bathroom, I want you to notice your feet. Notice how you're walking. So with our feet, in the body, our right side is what's called our masculine energy. So it represents our doing. It makes decisions. It's the analytical part of us, okay? Our left side is our feminine, which represents, so the right side also represents the past, or the present time. The left side represents the past. And it represents the feminine, which is the being part of us, okay? And the chaotic part of us, the dark part of us. Dark without attaching to that word. It's the soul side of who we are. And so with your feet, I hope you wrote down how your feet were, because you're probably going to notice through the day how difficult it is to change that. So I'm going to give you a couple foot positions. So in the body as well, this part of the body is also the outer world. The inner world would be the inner part here of the body. The inner part of the thighs is part of the inner world. So when we're standing, if you have someone that, say your right foot is out. So if the right foot tends to be out, that's my tendency, is I'll stand like this, where the right foot goes out. So what that means is my tendency, in the past more so, has been to go into my head versus into my heart. So that becomes a safe place for me, is to stay in my head, okay? So that's my tendency. If it's your tendency, that's what I want you to write down. The challenge is to come back into the heart space, back into the body, back into the feeling space, which is the body and the unconscious mind. That is our body, okay? If your left foot goes out, you tend to be more of a, you act more from emotion than you do your mind. Because the left side represents more emotional, right side intellectual. And so everyone's different. Which way are you? So that's two. If your feet tend to go out. So in the world of energetics and psychosomatics, what that indicates is there's sometimes can be confusion about which direction you're heading in. I'm not quite sure. And if you think of a car, if the wheels go this way, it doesn't go very long. And long term, when your feet go out, structurally, most people will blow their knees out by the time they're in their 60s, and or a hip, because our body is not designed to go out. Make sense? So we have the structural part and the energetic part. Now, if your feet come in, remembering what I said, the inner part of the thighs represents the inner world. And there's a protection. When we stand really close together, the protection of that inner world is pretty strong. And so what I would challenge you to do is, if that's you, I want you to open up your feet. So they're about like 2 fist widths apart. And notice what that feels like. And please know it feels really strange to shift how you stand, because we've been standing like that since we were little people. And there's lots of reasons why we stand that way. And it's really important that you stay neutral when you look at this part, because the habitual patterns in our body, so if there's been any type of trauma, specifically I would say, where a child feels threatened in any way, the tendency is to stand close together because you're protecting that inner world, that vulnerable space. And so when I'm asking you to open your feet the tiniest bit, you're going to feel weird. You're going to say, this doesn't feel right. And that's where that connection of connecting back to a little one within you that goes, no, this feels safe to me, because our body's the unconscious mind, right? And it wants to keep us safe. And what I'm asking you to do is be uncomfortable by even that simple part of opening the feet. We want to retrain the flesh to go into alignment, like what Jessica was talking about. Because if the body's out of alignment, it's going to take you so much longer to create that synergy and that balance. And so as you do it, notice how uncomfortable it is, because it is, and it feels weird. And I think the stranger part is you think other people notice and they don't. Most people only notice themselves in general. And I'm a freak in that I look at how people walk because that's what I do, right? That's my job. But know that most people they're not going to notice if you tend to stand even like with your feet like this, and you go, oh yeah, that lady said I should put my feet straight. Whoever you're speaking to is not going to go, what are you doing with your feet? They're not noticing that. So it's slight, but it's not slight for you. And the reason we want our feet to be straight is because it tells the right and left hemispheres of the brain that we are moving straight into our lives versus having a right foot out or left foot out or the feet in. There's a disconnect in the psychosoma of the body. And so the alignment that Jessica was speaking about literally is alignment and bringing the body in and making sure your feet are straight more often. So people that have a wider stance, and women have it too where they stand pretty wide, I want you to bring your feet in and just make sure they're straight. And that will feel super strange because the body is so intelligent. Its job has always been since you were tiny to keep you safe. And what it will do, I promise you, because this is the funny part about psychosomatics. You're going to go, well, that doesn't sound very hard. Because I'm telling you it's challenging. What is the challenging piece is the memory in the cells is going, we don't do that because that isn't safe. I promise you that will happen. It feels weird. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm going to go back to what I always do because that's where I feel safe, and you're so correct. And I'm challenging you to allow yourself to be uncomfortable, to lean in, to uncomfortable, and allowing your feet to be straight. That's not a minor detail. It's a massive detail because you're asking the energetics in this dense flesh. Our bodies are energy, but it's heavy, it's dense. You're asking that to shift. And the other part that I would tell you is when you feel strange or uncomfortable is to say, you're okay, body, you're okay. Because it's going to get activated and you're going to go, this is stupid. And that part of our psychosoma to keep us the same, it will fight to the death to keep it the same because it'll scare the hell out of you because it starts to activate cellular memory, right? And the cellular memory is going, oh, we can't take up space. If someone puts their feet together all the time, I'm just generally speaking, for someone like that to open their legs a little more makes them completely vulnerable. Oh my God, people are going to see me. That's a big deal, isn't it? So as you listen and you're listening to me, when you physically do it today, I would really like you to notice how you feel, not what you think about what I said. How do I feel? Well, I don't like it and it's uncomfortable. And or it might be, I can do this. But the challenge comes in, and this is the crazy part about our bodies. The challenge comes in when you're activated. and someone pisses you off. Then what happens, so if I'm and I'm speaking of men, because a lot of men stand like this, and I'm asking you to bring in that feminine side a tiny bit and balance that energy. Someone pisses you off, the body's going to go, woof. I promise you that happens. And so what I'm asking you to do, hello, I didn't see you. What I'm asking you to do is, in the activation, so you notice, and Jessica also talked about that, this is the embodiment piece. The activation or the breakthrough or the breakdown, whatever word you want to use, I want you to bring your feet together. So you're like 2 fist widths apart. And I want you to relax your toes, because the toes also get activated. The toes represent our thinking mind. So what I want you to begin to notice today is, when you're nervous, do your toes come up off the ground? Which all of this means something. Do they come off the ground, or do they clench? And what I'd like you to notice today is, can I relax my toes and straighten my feet? Because it's habitual patterns, and we don't even know we do it. And then those habitual patterns show up in our thinking, in our acting, how we show up, how people experience us show up. But it's unconscious, because we're always communicating, and not just with our voice. People are reading our body language all the time. All the time. And so if you're uncomfortable, okay, so what? I'm sure all of you have done harder things than straighten your feet. The challenge will be when you're triggered. And the alignment piece that Jessica was talking about, and I also believe that it's a lot of courage to notice yourself within the trigger. The more that we can notice when we're triggered in our flesh, not our head, it moves faster out of us, and there's a better sense of integration when we're triggered and we notice, oh my God, my toes are coming up, or I'm clenching my butt. Can I relax? Can you see how the integration will come in? So the information is fantastic. The integration in the flesh is where the magic happens. Because what most people tend to do, and human beings will go into their head and start processing and having conversations versus coming back in here and go, okay, I'm going to relax my toes, and I'm going to straighten my feet. I'm okay within this trigger. And sometimes you need to do it after. But what you're asking your system to do is you're teaching the flesh to not clench up, not go into fight or flight or freeze, but you're being aware within your own observation of what's happening. Can you see how powerful that is? And really helpful to teach your children if you have children. When they're speaking with people, when they're having a conversation, to make sure that they're standing up straight and their feet are straight. People will listen to them differently and experience them differently than if they go into an old pattern of how they used to be. It's really, really powerful. And Amanda was saying this morning about this wasn't about her, this whole thing. And I feel the same way about the psychosomatic work, because it's been a long process to get into the space where I want to share it with people and stand up in front of people, because I don't do that a lot. I'm doing it more because it's so important. There's so much happening in our world all the time, and we forget to come back into our own body. We forget to check in. How am I showing up for me today? How are other people going to experience me if I'm in alignment? Love that phrase. That means in your intellect, your heart, and the body. Am I in alignment? Are my feet straight? Can I relax my toes? And it sounds so simple. So notice yourself through the day, because you're changing the densest part of you, which is your flesh. And that's what we need to retrain, is to remind our bodies that we're safe in our own flesh. And that safety requires you to unclench and or relax your toes if your toes come up. It's a big deal. And if you practice it and practice it, I always practice it in that I notice when I get nervous, for me, my toes come up, which is a flight response in the body. Fight will be someone who tends to clench their toes. What's your response? So the more that you can understand about how you respond to a stimulus and then maybe shift it just a tiny bit and move out of it, the more integrated you will be. And it makes it much easier emotionally because you come out of your head and into your body. And one thing that I teach my clients and teach people is, if you can think of yourself as a little kid, or imagine a little kid, preferably you, hopefully, to calm that little one down, you would say, take a breath. You're safe with me. That's what we're doing. As you're changing the habitual patterns from childhood, that's what we're doing, is you're saying, it's okay if you relax your toes. And I know that sounds so simple, and I promise you it isn't when you're triggered. Because you can't. That's where it becomes real. How many, I have clients in here, and I teach all my people this. Is there anyone that's willing to share how difficult it is when you get triggered to do that and have your body come back? It does take a while because the body doesn't want to. And because it's the thread connected to trauma. And what the body knows is safety, and how do I stay safe? So that's why that little inner child in you, to let that child know you're safe to relax your toes, I got your back. So important, okay? And today I want to teach you about faces. It's one of the pieces that I use within my work and that I teach. What does a face mean? So I'm going to go through some basic face shapes. And so today, as you're looking at the speakers, as you're having lunch, you go to the bathroom, I'd like you to notice face shapes, because it will help you better understand the person in front of you, and hopefully better understand you as you notice yourself in the mirror, okay? And in our faces, we have habitual patterns too. So as you get older, we start to see the habitual patterns. Sometimes you'll see lines between the eyebrows. You might see lines up here, depending on how you process information. And the older we get, the more that we can see those patterns. And so this is to help you understand yourself, once again, and others, and see people in a different way. It's a different way to see. So I'm going to pull this over in the middle. Okay. I'm going to start with I guess I can erase it with my hand. A square. So what happens if you put a square object on a table? What? Solid. It doesn't roll. It pretty much is a square. Right? You can look at it and go, that's a square. And you know that a square is always going to be a square. It's not going to change form. It's not going to move. It's pretty square. So when we're looking at a square face shape, and most people have a mix of two, so please know it's rare that you have just one face shape. So when we're looking at a square face shape, I see a few. Can I have a volunteer if I see your face? It's much better to have a real face. Tell me your name again.
Courtney.
Courtney, thank you for being brave.
Mm-hmm.
She's beautiful, as we all can see. So we're going to look at her face. You can see when you look at her, you notice the jawline square, right? And so we're looking at some of the traits of a square-ish jawline. The jawline is about how we move into the world. Thank you. Yeah. How we move into the world. And if someone is a square, they tend to have a lot of stability within themselves. They're able to do physically pretty difficult things. They're able to push harder than most people can push that don't have the square. That is one of their gifts. And the challenge to a square is being stubborn. They tend to think, everyone will be a part of this. They tend to think the squarish face shape, well, their way is the right way. And why can't you understand that? Why can't you understand that I already know? Yeah. My Davis is a pitcher. He pitches in baseball. And he was playing college ball, so he made it pretty far. Very square face shape. And they tend to have less fear than people who don't have a square face shape. And I asked Davis one night after a game, we went to a baseball game, I'm a mess at baseball because I'm so nervous that he's going to not do well and I want him to do good. I'm like sweating and I almost have to force my eyes open because I am not a square face shape. Davis is. And after one of the games, because Davis would close pitching, right? Close the game. And I said, Davis, does that make you nervous? He goes, duh, of course it doesn't. Right? Because he knows, and that's part of the square face shape, that when they commit to something, they're going to do it and they're going to do it well. It's an innate knowing. And when we look at the bone structure in the body, the bone structure is our blueprint for this lifetime. This is who you came in as. So the gifts and challenges that you have in your own bone structure is important to know. So for the square face shape, for Davis, my son, his biggest challenge is being flexible in how he sees things. Because remember, a square is pretty inflexible. That's the gift and challenge though, right? That's the gift and challenge, because I know I could count on you, whatever I asked you to do, and probably it doesn't matter how hard it is, I know you could do it because of your face shape. Even if you're uncomfortable, I know you could do it. Right? And same with Davis. And so that's one of the gifts and challenges. Gift is they get stuff done. They're very hardworking. Challenges, they can be inflexible. And it's difficult for them to see a different way. That's their challenge. So if you're married to someone or you have a child that's square, you're going to speak to them very differently. It has to be their idea. So however we need to move this face, it has to be their idea, and then they'll move. We've learned with Davis that if we plant the seed, hey, this might be a good idea, Davis. A few weeks later, he'll go, well, I thought of something. I think I'm going to do this. But can you see how valuable that is versus me saying what I think I would do, because I act faster than he does, because I'm not square. Can you see how valuable that is? And understand, if you have a square-faced child or a partner, it's difficult for them to not be right. That's part of that structure. And a lot of times they are right. But you're always dancing, and I call it between light and shadow. In the psyche, we have light, things that we're aware of, and we also have shadow, things that we are blind to. And the face component and the walking parts, I want you to look at shadow. I want you to see what you don't see today. Acknowledge the things and the gifts that you do see, but I want you to see the things you don't see today. And don't get all wound up in them. That's not my intention. My intention is to bring light to parts that you don't see, and other people might. Okay? All right, so that's the square. I'm going to change this just a little bit to a rectangle. So in a rectangle, what's different about a rectangle? It's longer. Does it move on a table? No, it doesn't. It's still pretty stable, right? I'm just looking at some faces. I do see quite a few rectangles. Let me just look at these faces. You're probably the best. Can you come on up?
Me?
Yes.
We were just saying that he's a square.
He's not.
It's my face is small.
He's not a square. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to move you over here in front.
Front and center, huh?
Yes. So, and this is Kelly. Thank you. Okay. So when we look at Kelly's face, can you see the difference? It's not as wide here, but can you see how his face is longer? So the capacity is longer versus wider. Do you see that?
Dad, look straight.
He's deaf.
Everybody's staring at my face.
Can everyone see that? When you see him, you don't go, wow, he has a square jaw. You look at him, he appears square, but he's longer. Make sense? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So in this face type, when the face is longer, and if you begin to notice people on TV, this is the best. You'll see people that, these are the people that have really high ideals. They are the people who save the planet, save the animals. They want to save everyone. These are needed people on our planet. And the squarish part on the bottom gives them, remember when I said with square, it gives someone the ability to push through and do difficult things? Don't you think saving the planet or saving animals is challenging when other people don't want to? It takes someone with a lot of courage and strength, and that comes within the bone structure of this person. And the high ideals, the high forehead, as we can see Kelly, most of them will have a very high forehead, and that's our intellect. They're very, very smart people, and they tend to make really good managers. They organize well. They are excellent at organization because it's important to them. They tend to manage people or manage projects. And this one, the challenge for the rectangular face is very similar to the square, is they can't understand why you don't want to save the planet too. And they get really pissed off when people don't do what they think is important. And can you see how that's a gift and challenge? Then they step into shadow. If they're not willing to make room for people not seeing it their way. And then manipulation can happen in many forms for this one because they're super bright and they know how to get you to move how they want you to move. But that would be shadow. Because we're all different and we all bring different gifts. But this one specifically, and I've met so many that it's so hard to wrap their brain around why you can't understand that this is important. Whatever their cause is. Why won't you come fight with me? Why won't you come protest with me? Why won't you do this? We're all made differently. Can you see the gift and challenge? But we need these people because they're the people who stand up and say this is wrong. This person is super important in our planet. To go, no, it's not okay. And then because they have the squarish face, they can withstand all of the kickback that's going to come from them saying no and having a boundary. And they don't care. They really, I think a lot of this, they get off on that. They love that. It's like an adrenaline rush because they can handle it. It's part of how they're put together. So really important people to have, and thank you for being my model. I'm going to just... That's funny. Okay. So then we have the oval face shape. And we tend to think of the oval face shape as more feminine. Men also have oval face shapes, but our media mostly shows a lot of oval face shapes as the perfect face shape. Just looking, let me see whose face I can borrow. April, you're probably a good one. Come on up. This is April. So if we look at April's face shape, can I pull your hair back just a little bit? Just because it gives a different, I'll just hold it.
I can do it.
Okay. So you can see she has a rounding here. She doesn't have any hard lines. When we're looking at an oval face shape, there's no hard lines. Her chin does come down a little more, but it's pretty oval. Can you see that? So when you see someone with an oval face shape, thank you. When you see someone with an oval face shape, I want you to think of an egg. So if I put an egg on a table, what happens to the egg? It goes, ding, ding, ding. I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. What should we do? I don't know. What do you think we should do? Right, and they go back and forth and back and forth. So challenge, gift. Can you see the challenge? I don't know what I think, but what do you think? I don't know what you think, but what do I, right? Back and forth. And the gift in the oval face shape is flexibility. The challenge is over flexibility and not setting a boundary. It's usually boundaries with oval. And the tendency is they tend to, I'm generally speaking, they tend to be people pleasers because they're asking, well, I don't know, what do you think? And they'll tilt their head. I don't know, what do you think? Right? And you'll even notice it in their head. Their head will tilt to the side that whoever they're talking to, which I find fascinating, that the body will move according to whatever you might need me to say. Right? And it's pretty amazing. So the gift and challenge in an oval is tricky because they have to learn to find their center point with an egg. What's my center point? And that's what Jessica talked about with us this morning is when I'm in alignment with myself, capital S, when I'm in my own sovereignty, capital S, that's my center point. And even the language of, you said, I took power, right? Where do we find our power? We find it in our alignment of finding our center point. What is that for you? And if the body's out of alignment, that's a problem. That's why I'm teaching this, because we have to bring all of the components, not just the intellect, into alignment. So as you straighten your feet and even your head, so that I'm going to just add a little more homework for you today. Most everyone will tilt their head to the side that they listen to most. So what I want you to do is notice yourself and bring your head straight. And make sure your head is also, instead of forward, to back, on the spine, on the body. That is the center point of alignment. Super uncomfortable when you're triggered. Super uncomfortable because the body's going, what are you doing? This isn't safe for me. And what you're teaching the flesh as you come into alignment, as you find your sovereignty, as you find your power is, nope, this is my center. That used to be my center and it's moved. It's right here. And you want your face to, or your head to be straight, your feet to be straight. So you really start to integrate the flesh because this is our vehicle. Really important. So yeah, the oval face shape can be challenging. And it's part of that soul lesson in general for oval to find what their boundaries are. Square people, I said no. Right? I don't know what the problem is. Oval people go, well, did you say no because da-da-da-da-da, right? It's so different in how they interact. I just said no. April would say, well, maybe there's another way. Maybe we could talk about it differently. Can you see how important it is to understand who you're speaking to? And why someone with a square face would just say no, and April might have another point of view, and where there could be conflict because of that. And it's not intentional, it's just how they're put together. Okay? Okay, let's go to the next one. Triangle. I'm going to look at your faces. Let me just see. Ooh, you're a good one. Can you come up?
Oh, good, because I had no idea what he was.
Oh.
This is an answer to prayer right
Oh,
here.
good. Tell me your name.
Daniel.
Daniel, I'm Christy. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, you're so brave. I know this is weird, but we look anyway, right? Okay, so we're looking at Daniel's face. Can you see how the bottom part of his face is wider than the upper part? Do you see that? And it's not perfect triangle, but we're looking at face shapes because we always usually have two. So if we look at Daniel's face shape, this widest part, he's sensitive here. When the chin comes down versus staying wider, he's sensitive in how he moves into the world. But this wider part, so the tendency with this face shape, thank you, is if you think of a volcano, right? This is the shape of a volcano. The tendency for this face shape is to swallow what they think, swallow what they feel, dealing with that later, and over time, what happens to a volcano? It can explode or erupt. So these people are they are the people that get the hard work done. They do the things that other people aren't willing to do because they're too hard. And this face shape is very sensitive. You wouldn't think they would be because their ability to do difficult tasks, emotionally and physically, they're highly sensitive because the challenge is people usually experience them as very strong and capable and, well, you're the strong one, Daniel. Why don't you speak? You do it. You're the strong one. But really what it is they know they are, and yet the challenge is expressing how difficult it might be to be that. How difficult and challenging it is to always be the strong one. And to be the fighter or the warrior, if we're looking at archetypes. These people do tend to be warriors because that's their face shape. The face shapes will come into the archetypes just as well of patterns. And with this one, what they will learn as they have explosions, so they can lose their temper if they suppress too much emotion, then it goes out and everything's okay. And then they can't understand why other people are upset that, well, that just happened because I needed to tell you how I felt. But when a volcano goes off, sometimes the residue from the volcano can burn us because it's been held for so long, and then explosion. And then it's difficult for them to be understood because the experience of someone that has that really, and his comes down a little more, but if you see someone with a really wide jawline, their biggest challenge is not exploding, where an oval is imploding. They tend to keep everything in, and then their body starts to create disease. Where the other one, they'll explode and the energy moves out. The most important thing is the energy has to move out of us. So just to understand this face type, I have a sister, I have 13 people in my siblings. And so I've had a good example of learning face shapes. But I have a sister that has this face shape. And we as siblings do this, we would joke about her temper. Because like when this girl blows up, she blows up. And once I understood this, I'm like, oh, because she never had the skill set to say this is what I need or this is what I feel. And that's why when the explosion happens and she can't understand why people don't understand. So it gave me a completely different sense of compassion for her that I never had before, and her stubbornness. Because that's how she's put together. And I love that about her. But it's one of those things that if I know what I'm looking at and you experience someone in a different way, you're going to have a lot more compassion for if there is an explosion. Maybe get them a glass of water and say, let's just take a breath. Versus if you're an oval face shape or the other triangle, that could blow you over. Okay? And then we'll come to the other triangle, the inverted triangle. And can I use your face? Mm-hmm.
I thought I was oval.
You're oval on the top.
Okay.
So tell me your name.
Rhiannon.
Hi, Rihanna.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if we look at her face, can you see how she is oval on the top, and we're always going to have two in a face, but can you see how tiny her chin is? Okay, so if we put, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
If we put a triangle on a table, what happens? It's different than an egg even, isn't it? This is a sensitivity point. That's what my face is, inverted triangle for sure. And this person is highly sensitive. So what do you think a gift and challenge of a highly sensitive inverted triangle would be? Sorry, what?
They're very empathic.
They're usually always highly empathic. Yeah, more vulnerable. So with this face shape, this high sensitivity, usually in their life they will hear, you're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. And it will often come from a square face. She has, yeah, the triangle here. I'll use you as an example for the next one. But they will hear, you're way too sensitive. Buck up. By square-faced people. No offense, people, but that's what happens. Because they get annoyed. Like, why is she crying? What is she doing? Or he. But usually she cries. Why is she crying? Why is she doing that? It makes me uncomfortable. Because we don't like that part of the world. Because you're square. We know what's going to happen, and we know how to handle it because that's who we are. But the sensitivity in the triangle, their gift lies in, and that's like, I explain this one as like a knife's edge. If you don't know what your edge is, you can be in a lot of trouble. Because people will manipulate this person very easily because they don't know their center point. They don't know where their power comes from. And Jessica, I laughed. I'm laughing while you were talking. I'm like, oh, that's good. You were talking about what's your superpower. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, I know my superpower. My archetype is magician. I know my superpower. My superpower is seeing what other people don't see. That's a superpower. But it comes from this. It comes from my face shape here. In that my sensitivity, when I'm in alignment, my sensitivity of what I can see or hear or sense is extremely high. If I am out of balance and I get too tired or I don't communicate, these people, it's difficult for them to tell you what they think. Very difficult with boundaries on this person. Because that high sensitivity, they don't want to hurt your feelings. Whereas square face, that's not even in their nature. They will tell you. This person usually won't. This person will just go and shut down. This is the implosion. The explosion is the other. The implosion is here. And what happens with implosion is depression, is anxiety, is irritable bowel. The body starts to create disease because the energy never moves out. So it's important if you have this face shape to do movement. It's important if you have this face shape to figure out what your superpower is so you know your center. And everyone's different in this face shape. I just told you mine. That doesn't mean that's what you are, but what is your superpower in this one? Because you find it and you know when you're on, no one will be able to push you in any direction. You know your center point. It's the eye of the needle. And it's important when you see little children with this face shape, if you have them, how you communicate to them is vital. You have to be gentle with this face shape. because they're so sensitive, you could crush them and not even know it. And then they start crying, and that's where parents will say, you're way too sensitive. Life's hard and you got to get used to it. Like we say things, and I include myself in this, we say things that we're not comprehending what we're talking to or who we're talking to. Where you have another sibling, like in my opposite sister, I'm way too sensitive and she's way too harsh. Can you see how that would conflict? But now that I understand myself better and I understand her better, I'm like, it's all good. We make room, we create a greater capacity for other people when we create a greater capacity for ourselves. It has to work both ways, and it starts here. And that's what Amanda put this together for, is the lean in, is lean into being uncomfortable. Lean into your greatness. Lean into your superpower. Lean into all of those parts of us that put us together to go, I'm pretty freaking amazing. Do we have to work and do the excavation? Yes. And at the end of the day, I really believe that it's to come into that space that we are amazing humans. We're each made differently. We each process differently. And good. Life would be super boring if we all had triangles or squares. So we have a nice mixture of faces. So as we go around today, notice people's faces. I will use you as an example, if you don't mind. Because there's a couple, this is a different face shape. Come over here. Tell me your name.
Jamie.
Jamie.
Yes.
These are the beautiful girls of Jessica. So if we look at her face shape, can you see the widest part of her face? She's a very good example, is her cheeks. So in the face, the cheeks and the eyes represent the heart. So she's kind of like a heart shape. Can you see that? And this person, when you look at her, what do you notice? What would you say is her most prominent feature? Her cheeks, which is her heart. So this one has a very big heart, and then you can see how her chin comes down and high sensitivity. Mm-hmm. So this one will be fairly sensitive when her feelings are hurt.
Yeah, Courtney.
Right?
Yeah.
She's a sensitive one.
Yes, very.
And she's also one, so when we're looking at hearts and cheeks, someone with these beautiful full cheeks, they are someone that holds the archetype of love. They embody love. People love to be around them. They just feel good around them. They feel loved around them. And it's in her inherent nature to be loved because her widest part of her face is in her heart zone. And in my, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know what my time is. A couple more minutes? Okay. So when you're looking for people in your life to do different things, to look at the face and to understand that is really helpful, right? So, for example, you would be someone I would ask you to watch my kids. I wouldn't ask someone with super high cheekbones because how they see the world are very different. But I know someone with beautiful rosy cheeks. They hold the mother archetype. They are love, and they're going to be nice to my kids, even when my kids are naughty. They'll say, oh, come on, let's be good. Or somebody else be like, right? Because she sees the world differently than someone with really pronounced cheekbones. So it's really different in how you see people. I was just looking at your face, round face shape. Thank you for reminding me as I'm looking at your face. Oh, yes, thank you. Then I won't put that on my face today. Okay, and we have the round. Will you be our model? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. So good to see you. Tell everyone your name.
You. Hi, I'm Grace.
Grace. Such a fitting name
Yeah.
for what we're doing today. So Grace, when you look at her face, she has more of a round face shape, right? Can I pull your bangs up?
Oh, yeah.
So you can see the more roundness when you see her face. And if we put Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If we put a round ball on a table, what happens? Right? It rolls off the table. It can roll back on. It does this. And so the round face shape, these people are the fun people in life. You want to invite them to your party. Because they'll say, Grace, you're so fun. I just like hanging out with you. Like, you're so laid back. Yeah, she is, because that's how she's put together. The round-faced people are the fun people. They usually represent joy. They're joyful. They embody fun and joy. And the challenge with that is boundaries. Because of that ability to morph in and out of situations, no matter what situation they're in, they do really well. But the challenge is the boundary. When do they find their place to stop moving to what other people might need them to be? So that one can be manipulated easily. Because they're super nice, people will ask them things that they probably shouldn't. Oh, I'll just ask Grace to do it. She'll do it. She's so nice. And as children grow up, and then they become adults, we all learn, well, that doesn't feel good. I don't want to do that. And so we all have to find our center point. And with a circle, the round face shape, that can be challenging. Can you see why? Because she has to find her center as well. And that is difficult, especially if you grow up in an environment where there are no boundaries. And this child moves in and out between, depending on her life experience with parents and family and religion. Well, where do I belong? Because she moves in and out of crowds and people and circumstances and groups super easy, and she fits in everywhere. Where's my center? Who am I outside of everything that's happening around me? And that is sovereignty. Who am I outside of what anyone thinks, what they need, who they are? Who am I in here? That is power. And not power over other people. That's your center point. And it's really important in our bodies to find our center point and what does it feel like. That's why I had you walk around. So the center point in psychosomatics is my feet are straight, my chin is up as well and straight on my spine. I want you to begin to feel what it feels like to stand in your center point and notice the uncomfortableness. Allow the cells in your body to begin to learn a different way to be. And when you're uncomfortable, we're in a lean in today to being uncomfortable and telling all those little cells that have been the same way for so long, it's okay. I'm okay in this moment, because all we have is this moment. Really powerful. I do have over on the table, so I teach face reading. I have a class in a couple weeks. And at the end of, or in October, I have an online class teaching psychosomatics, which in that you will learn all about the body. You'll learn faces, you will learn every part of your body means something. Can you feel sorry for my children for 1 second? So you'll learn hands, you'll learn toes, you'll learn about the body. Every part of you means something about how you're put together and what are the pieces that you might not be aware of. And how can we better keep coming back into that center point of power? What is my superpower? How can I integrate all parts of me? That's what psychosomatics is. And it's a gentle process. It's not it's challenging. I will say that. But it's a gentle process. And you learn so much about yourself. So if you're interested, it's over. You'll see my picture, my face on my 2 little pages. Feel free to look at that. And so for today, make sure you check your feet all day. And also just notice everyone's faces. And let's start seeing other people through a different lens. A little more compassion for ourselves and compassion for other people. Can I borrow your face for one more? Borrow your face, borrow your body. Tell me your name.
Rebecca.
Rebecca. She's a very good example of a triangle. Do you see that? And she has beautiful chiseled cheekbones. She's a very good example. So someone with those super high cheekbones, these people have very high ideals as well, and they usually always get what they want.
No, I do
But that tells me there might be something out of balance.
Correct.
Because it's in your structure. So that's where this beautiful part of psychosomatics is coming in. No, she doesn't. Then that tells me something's out of alignment within her that she doesn't, because her structure is that. Her structure is, well, these people, when she walks into a room, people notice her. And they go, wow, because she's striking. These people get what they want. If she's not getting what she wants, then there's something to look at, right? There's something that's not quite in alignment. I can. But the difference in the two are night and day. Each are special, though. Each one has a gift. And this is a leader. She's a leader because of her cheekbones. If I just looked at that, I know that she could lead something or run something, and I could ask her to do that quite easily. That's one of her gifts. Really good to know. You're welcome. Thank you. So that's my little talk today. So thank you, and thank you for coming.